Okay. Okay, so we have basically, we've covered a lot, and we really have.
Yeah.
I just want to do one last topic, which is going to take, unfortunately, as I'm looking it over, it might take most of our 2 remaining sessions, which would then kind of cut out a little bit like the free topic. But I think too, like if I do it right, like we won't have to be so cut and dry, and we'll still have some time for fun. So it's 102 slides. We're not going to try to cover them all. I'm going to try to compact it as much as I can. I just don't think you can teach a good intermediate macro class without this last topic. And quite honestly, we've done, so this is the second time this class is being taught here since I've been here. And so at least we're covering more than what we did the last time. And you gotta keep in mind too, that's still with the fact that we missed one session because I was out of town and one session because of Bruno. So we've done pretty good. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know. I wasn't too sad about having to miss it, I guess. I mean, at least I avoided everybody. Okay, so I want to share this. Share. Okay, and I want to do video. Where's the video? Maybe you're just not going to see us. Okay, here we go. Do you see us, Owl? There you go. There we go. Okay, so what this is then dealing with here is, as we wait for this to come up here, this is topic 9. So this will be the last full topic for this course. And what this deals with is the very beginnings of what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we were talking about aggregate demand. So if you remember, we were talking about like recessionary gaps and inflationary gaps with aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and talking about that there's this kind of full employment level where aggregate demand meets aggregate supply. And the thing we did is we differentiated short-run aggregate supply from long-run aggregate supply. Yeah, actually, you're right. We need this because we got to plug this bad boy into here. Why do you guys have to pay so much tuition and still have an ancient computer here? Okay, so let's talk about, we need to construct now what the aggregate demand curve looks like. So that's the first part of this lecture. You saw what the aggregate demand curve looks like, which was, we kind of just said from 2 weeks ago, it just looked like a regular demand curve, right? Nothing too interesting beyond that. Hey, and then what we basically want to do first is construct what it would look like. And then we need to then talk about a little bit more about how that aggregate demand curve, what are the components of it, and how does it exist with supply. Okay, so to do that, we're going to need to construct something called the Keynesian cross. And we're going to combine that with liquidity preferences so that we get an ISLM model. That ISLM model, where the IS is telling me about sort of the goods market, and this is talking to me about the money market. We're then going to combine the ISLM model to then determine interest rates. So this is all coming about in macro theory from the 1930s, basically. So you're basically learning what we would call classical macroeconomics. Now, most of this you have not seen in your Principles of Macro course. So this will be largely, for the most part, new material. So we're going to construct an IS curve, Then we're going to construct an LM curve, and then we're going to look at what does that tell us. And basically what it does is it tells us what the interest rates should be and what the income levels will be. Okay. So I lifted these slides, so I'm not the author of these slides, unlike the other presentations. So any error, so this actually will look a little bit cleaner because I didn't actually, I think they'll have all the terms and everything. I don't think anything will be missing from it. Now, let's start with the Keynesian cross. What we're trying to do here is we're using the Keynesian cross to build an IS model. We're trying to do IS and LM. So these are two models that we're using to construct aggregate demand. So I'm going to stick with the closed economy, but what you're going to see here is that there's a difference between what we plan to spend and what we actually spend. The difference between what is planned and what is actually spent is going to be inventories. So this is why, or this is how John Maynard Keynes in the 1920s, 1930s understands recessions happening. So if you remember, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about recessions. Why do they occur? How do we know when we see them? Well, for Keynes, the instability in the economy is caused by the fact that firms have to buy things in one period of time based on what they think they will sell in some future period of time, right? So all the stores, that are buying all their stuff to sell for the Christmas holidays, they obviously bought that all way back in they got it probably all delivered in the summer, right? I mean, if you go to the Walmart here in Kapolei, they've got just like storage containers filled with probably 32-inch TVs that they're all going to sell for $99 or whatever, right? Now, it's on Walmart, though, unfortunately, if people don't buy it. But then think about it the other way. Think about the company that made them, right? They probably made them way back in January, right? To construct them, ship them to Hawaii, and get them to the Walmart store by end of summer, early fall. So, right? So if we think about this, multiple businesses are building up an inventory based on what they're hoping they're going to sell. We don't actually know if they're actually going to sell it. Which is why, then again, there's this curious little fact that economists are worried about right now, for instance. Right now, the economy is growing at the fastest rate it's ever grown. Now, you might think, well, shit, man, Trump really knows what he's doing. How did he manage that? But you know why? It's because businesses anticipating tariffs coming about built up their inventories far exceeding what they thought their sales were going to be, because they're like, we know we're going to get hit with tariffs, so we're going to build up extra inventories beyond what we think we're actually going to sell. But do you see there? It's kind of temporary. It's fleeting. Because they didn't buy 5 years worth of steel purchases, right? They just bought like a few extra months hoping whatever this is will go away. And now it didn't, right? So now all of a sudden companies are going to scale back then what they all did. So this I, the I that appears here for investment, you're going to see it both for actual and planned expenditures, but the difference is going to be, so we're going to call this, the only difference is going to be unplanned inventory investment. Why is it unplanned? Because a business might buy something, but then might not sell everything. And if it doesn't sell everything, it, in an unplanned fashion, built up its inventory, right? Because it was anticipating 1 million in sales, only sold 500,000. Well, I guess our inventory grew by 500,000, right? Because we only sold 500,000. Now, where we see this, look at that. So you know what? They're not perfect either. I like that. Okay, so let's add some terms here. There's a minus sign missing. The consumption function should be y minus t. That's actually the only thing really missing, actually, here.
What, down there?
Yeah, well, the two terms. Y minus T. So it's looking at your disposable income. We're assuming that government is running a balanced budget. We're not looking at net exports. And so basically we have a difference between planned and actual spending. Planned expenditures being PE, actual expenditures being the real GDP, or Y. So where would equilibrium exist? Equilibrium would exist, as the bottom equation shows. Equilibrium would exist when planned expenditures are equal to actual expenditures. But as you can see here, this is just one possible point among many others. Because the economy is not always in equilibrium. In other words, actual spending doesn't always equal planned spending. When it doesn't, right, we could see that planned spending exceeds actual. And in that case, where this is greater than this, that would be a recession, right? Where planned spending exceeds actual spending. And if planned spending exceeds actual spending, then inventories build up. On the other hand, if actual spending is greater than planned spending, meaning the inequality is favoring actual spending, then inventory levels are drawn down. And that would be our classic expansionary, overheated economy kind of state, which is kind of what we're facing right now, where businesses have incredibly low inventories because we're basically, building, constructing stuff at an all-time high level. Questions so far? Any questions so far?
So Y greater than PE.
If Y is greater than PE, then basically the inventory levels are brought down. Because the only way I can spend more than I actually planned would be by selling stuff I built in some previous time period. So if Y is greater than PE, my inventory levels are drawn down. If my planned expenditures PE is greater than Y, then my inventory levels increase. My inventory levels increase. Okay. So let's start to graph out what the Keynesian cross looks like. So if you want to add a subtitle to this slide, it would be basically we're trying to construct the Keynesian cross. So again, we need a Keynesian cross to create an IS curve. We're going to create then also an LM curve. So IS curves tell me about equilibriums in the goods market. We're going to use the Keynesian cross to create a IS curve. Then we're going to look at the money market and create an LM curve. ISLM creates for us the aggregate demand curve. So this is a multiple step process here. Keynesian cross helps us get the IS curve. Then we're going to have the LM curve, and we're going to use IS and LM together to get the aggregate demand curve. But we're just in the very beginning of this, trying to get the Keynesian cross constructed. But the Keynesian cross is then going to be the difference between, here's our planned expenditures. You notice here that it's starting at a non-zero level because the consumption function starts at a non-zero amount, right? Because we all need something to exist until tomorrow, right? We got to buy 2,000 calories of food, we have to pay for rent. But then, as our income goes up, we spend obviously a portion of that. That's our marginal propensity to consume part to this. Okay. So this is increasing at a constant rate, starting at a positive y-intercept. And now here is my, we know that any equilibrium position has to be at this 45-degree line, right? Because equilibrium is when planned expenditures equal actual spending. And if the two axes are what we actually spent versus what we planned to spend, right? Then the 45-degree line that traces out all of the possible equilibriums would have to be somewhere on this 45-degree line. Good so far? Okay. So, put the two together, and there we go. So what you would be able to see here is that obviously it generates for us what the equilibrium income level is, but as we change our planned expenditures, the C plus I plus G, we get obviously a different level of equilibrium level of income. So we could change this based on different C, I, and G levels. We can change this based on different C, I, and G levels. Wait for that. Oh, look, it's like a strobe light. It's like we're at a discotheque. Yeah, let's see. Like this. Well, actually, I'm going to move this to a more central location. It's only in the off chance that someone actually cares about seeing all of us. I doubt that anyone does, but here we go. Owl, who's all seeing and knowing. Okay, so here's our Keynesian cross. Now, and you see here that then we have a good understanding then that if the government does something different, in this case, what if we had increased expenditures by the government? Then what that will do is obviously increase the equilibrium level of income. So this would be an expansionary fiscal policy that, as you can see here, moves us from, so the vertical distance obviously is the amount of additional government spending, vertically shifts it up, causing, so the question here is, how do we go from this point to this point, right? I mean, how does that movement actually occur? Because what happens is that this shifts up, but then we have to travel to our new equilibrium. And that traveling process occurs because the inventory levels drop unexpectedly. And then what's the reaction to inventory levels dropping unexpectedly? Exactly, business is then saying, oh, fuck, we really totally unplanned this. We got to build up more inventory, right?
Yeah.
So building another warehouse, hiring more workers, et cetera, et cetera. And that obviously then just leads us to increasing output, right? Because now firms then make more orders to build up their inventory. Income levels rise because those workers that are working at that factory start getting paid more. And we basically move over time, and that's why you see these multiple arrows here, is that this occurs in an iterative process. I mean, it doesn't happen at once. This happened at once. This shifted up at once. So we start here at this point and then slowly travel to here through these things happening. Okay, so we move to equilibrium. Generally in the US economy, it's about a 6 to 9 month process, basically, depending on what's happening. So right now, I think I mentioned that, did I mention in this class what is the biggest driver though right now of economic growth in the US? Did I mention this one of the previous weeks, maybe? Exactly, military spending. Yep. So military spending is driving it. That would mean that the defense manufacturers, which would be Martin Marietta, Oshkosh. So let's look at something like Oshkosh. Oshkosh builds things like fire trucks. It builds, big municipal vehicles like garbage trucks. But it also builds tanks. It also builds Humvees. It builds military vehicles. Well, what that means, right, is that a city might make an order for like 10 fire trucks, but now all of a sudden they have to squeeze in all these orders for Humvees and tanks and whatever. And obviously then what that means is that Oshkosh then has to spend more money to build up its inventory levels, which then means that all the employment levels in the area build up, right? They maybe even build so much they need a new factory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that again leads to that iterative increase. But again, I hope what you're seeing here is that it's temporary. Eventually, at some point, G will have to go back down to G1 at some point. You can only maintain G2 for so long before you have to embark on cuts because you can't pay for everything. Okay, so how would we solve this? So what we've got is our actual spending on the left-hand side, our planned spending on the right-hand side. And we know that the term for, at least for our investment is given to us, determined by outside the factor. But what this does for us, well, I just see the term missing here. It should be 1 minus MPC, 1 minus MPC, 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. But what we're seeing here, yeah, it looks like it cut out the deltas. Yeah, cut out the deltas. This should be a delta G. This is the delta Y. So delta Y, delta G, delta Y, delta G, delta Y, delta G. So constant.
Do we need to know the solving for it, or you just know the equation?
I'm probably not going to, for the exam, I'm not going to focus on the solving part. I'm more concerned with high theory at this point than I am about solving. If we had more time, so this is the trade-off, and this is useful to know, at least by the time we end this class. If you were taking this class at Manoa, they meet longer and they meet more frequently. And also to take their intermediate macro class, you have to have taken their econometrics class. So they do theory and problem, and they have enough time to do both. Last time I taught this class, I had students do more problems, but unfortunately we got through like topic 6, I think. I made the judgment call to say I'd like to cover more topics, but do less problem solving. So yeah, you're not going to have to solve this. This is just for your general knowledge, is that the deltas and the minus signs are missing. So it's like a Where's Waldo of, again, this is just so you know, the things that are missing would be that this would be 1 minus MPC times delta Y equals delta G. Delta Y equals 1 over 1 minus MPC times delta G. This would be delta Y, delta G, delta Y, delta Y. Series of deltas. Now, let's, and so in the spirit of that, I'm going to just, no, I'm going to keep this in here because this is useful, because you talked about this, we would have talked about this in principles. The deltas and the minus signs are missing still again, but I don't know. I think it happens when I convert to PDF of PowerPoint. So this would be delta Y over delta G equals 1 over 1 minus MPC. You all learned that when you took principles of macro. This was called the government spending multiplier, which we understood as, right, I think I had a description where I was talking about the rail. I think that was the example I used for all of you who had that class with me. Was I used the example of rail, and I said, I always go to the 7-Eleven, the one that's out here in Kapolei on Farrington, and that place is like always packed, right? But it was really packed like 2 years ago when they were building this section of the rail. and I could never get a cold Slurpee because they would all be bought by the time I would get there. Now, right, the idea was that the 7-Eleven is benefiting from the government spending going on this side of the island, right? The entire economy is, right? Certainly this side of the island, right, which is like hot as hell and is like it's practically an arid desert, until we all, barged in here and started building stuff on this side of the island. It's only improved because, right, we spent a lot of money to build the rail, the government built this campus and a whole bunch of other things, right? Which is why Kapolei is certainly better than Waianae, but why is it that Waianae sucks? And at some level, it's not really any different than Kapolei. It's just that there's more government spending in Kapolei than there is in Waianae. But the idea is that the government doesn't have to do all the work, right? The government's going to spend, what, 8 billion on the rail? Something like that, right? No, 12 billion. And the federal government's paying 8 of it. Is that you're hoping that there's this increase, this government spending multiplier. So this would be delta y over delta g equals 1 over 1 minus NPC. Delta y, delta g, 1 minus, let's say that it's 0.8. Now this creates for us a government spending multiplier of 5. What that means, going back to this, is that for every $1 vertical increase, I'm getting a 5-unit increase in the income. This picture, do any of you like sports?
Oh, yeah.
You do? Yeah, so this would be, if at some campuses when they offer a class called sports economics, this is like a huge focus of the course because basically most governments spend a lot of money on building stadiums, right? Right now, and I saw this, the debate, I think I saw it on the news yesterday, they wanted to replace Aloha Stadium. I've actually never been to Aloha Stadium. Have all of you been to Aloha Stadium?
Yeah.
Kristen, have you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, you?
Yeah.
I've never been.
Graduation.
No, but I mean, the idea is that when Aloha Stadium was built, the city and county paid a lot of money to build it. Even though Bruno Mars and Kristen's high school graduation were all held there, right? Private events, right? That had their own revenue and whatever sources being brought in. But the idea was that the building of Aloha Stadium stimulated the entire economy. So the idea would be, I want to get a baseball team, right? We're going to have, I don't know, the Honolulu Surfers, right? Will be a major league team. The idea would be, why would Honolulu spend so much money? Well, right now they're actually spending money because we're going to have like, what is it? What, an LA Rams football preseason game or some non-counting game here, football game, right? And then the, what is it also? Golden State Warriors, I think they play like a preseason basketball game here. I think,
It was the
right?
Clippers.
It was the Clippers, okay.
Yeah.
Why does the Hawaii State Tourism Authority, HSTA, why does it spend money to do those things? Exactly this kind of thing, right? The idea is that they build Aloha Stadium, Bruno Mars comes to town, and then people spend money at, they actually travel to Aiea, which they normally wouldn't, right? They buy food in Aiea, which they normally wouldn't. They drive there or they fly there from neighbor islands, right? They all pay taxes on the things they're buying. So you can see again how the economy is hopefully stimulated more. The only problem with that is that, especially for something like Bruno Mars, what would you have done? So, what would you have done otherwise?
Probably, if you had class, you'd probably go to your class.
Yeah, right. So it would be like go to class, or the idea is that you spend some money to drive there, and you spend some money for the ticket, and or you can pay some money to park. But it's really hard to say that someone flew here from LA just to see Bruno Mars, right? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe one or two did, but not very many. So the idea is that maybe it doesn't actually stimulate the economy by a 1 to 5 factor, because right? It's opportunity cost, right? Maybe you were going to go out to eat anyway. It's just that you went out to eat before a Bruno Mars concert instead of just going out to eat and thinking about your loser self, right? Sitting alone at a restaurant, right? That kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah, like at work for the Bruno Mars
Yeah.
concert, it was busy right until like 3 o'clock when they
Yeah.
opened the parking lot
Yeah.
for the Bruno Mars
Yeah.
concert. That's when it started to get really slow.
See, but then there's a whole other thing too, right? Because then during the concert, how many people came in? Like no one, right?
Yeah.
Because no one wanted to go out. So, right, so there's all these things that start to limit it. The unfortunate part is, right, Bruno Mars and his economic consultants, right, when they have to go to the city and county and say, you need to help subsidize us going to Aloha Stadium, they're going to say to the city and county, dude, for every dollar someone spends, it helps the whole economy by 5. And probably the government authorities don't think actually about the fact that it displaces some economic activity. And some of the activity was going to occur anyways. So, and then it looks cool, right? You brought in Bruno Mars, and then what was the other one? What's the one that's next week? You were saying, or the week after?
Kevin Hart.
Kevin
I
Hart.
missed his class.
Although that's pretty cool, though. He's a lot cooler than. Yeah. Oh, you gonna do that?
I don't know.
Is that what you're thinking of?
I like comedy shows.
I do too. I don't go to enough, but I
do enjoy a good stand-up comedy show.
I do too, and I like watch this. You know how like on on Facebook when they do those like little
little ads. Of,
Yeah.
Like Comedy Central, like college humor.
Yeah. There was this funny one. There was someone was doing it for like National Cat Day, and the guy was talking about the fact that someone was calling his cat fat, and he was like, "That's really mean and rude to say to your cat. Like, you know, like what's my cat gonna do?" And yeah, well, I'm not gonna try to do a comedy routine for you. But yes, it was funny. Okay, but so this is why the multiplier exists, and we saw this already in principles, but I've also just talked about it as well. Is that it feeds into itself, right? The government spends some money to build rail, and then Kapolei really as a city, as the second city that Oahu's been trying to grow for like 30 years, 40 years, is now finally taking off. And really, I know colleagues like, Keith Sakuda, I know in marketing, he didn't sign his contract to work here at this university because this university, right, we've existed for 41 years, 42 years, but its existence was always based out of Leeward. When we finally built the campus here, when I came on this campus, there were 2,500 students. That's almost like so little that you almost start to think that you shouldn't have built the campus. So if they need a lot of students, you almost need rail to exist so that people are buying homes, people are going to have an easy way to get here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't sign his contract to work at this university until the rail deal was finalized, which makes sense, right? Because once you know that the rail deal is finalized, now you know that this university is actually going to continue to exist. Without it, we would just be a university on the wrong side of the island, right? With people having no way to get here, right? Because not that many people live on this side of the island. Certainly far less than live in town. So
the multiplier is 5. That means for every dollar spent by the government would increase like just local spending in that economy.
So here's what's happening here is that so again, this rail project I think is $12 billion. So with that being the case, we're saying that the delta Y is going to be 60. Because what's happening here is that the delta Y then is consisting of 2 things. It's consisting of the 12 billion spent by the government, correct? Because that is a delta G, but it's also consisting of a delta C of 48. Because the delta C of 48 is being generated by the fact of, right, people then buying things as a consequence of the government spending more money.
Real expenditure.
Yep.
Goes up. The real expenditure is like we'll just buy stuff.
Exactly. But again, keep in mind that and this goes back to what I was just saying, that even though Bruno Mars will tell you that it's 5, that it's actually usually less than 5. Because think of things like crowding out, right? So if Bruno then does that, I bet you if I was Regal Cinema, no one came to my movies then, right? Saturday and Sunday and Thursday, right? Because people that want to go see things, they'd rather see the people in person. They're not going to want to sit in a movie house and watch things, right? Movie theater and watch things. Right? If they're at the theater, or I'm sorry, if they're at the concert, they're not going to go to the factory, right, and eat a meal, because if they're the kind of people that are going to go out, they're going to go see the show. They're not going to go to the factory and eat a meal.
Is that why like people usually eat close to it? Like, does that mean increasing government spending?
Yeah. So, but it's displacement. They were going to eat that day regardless, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't have gone out to eat. Maybe they would have eaten at home. But can you take the whole $50 bill they had at the restaurant and say, because of Bruno, people spend $50 at a restaurant? Not really, because it's got to be something less than that. Because maybe they were gonna go out to eat anyways. That would, right then there'd almost be no multiplier. Or even if they were going to eat at home, it's still going to be something less, right? Because they were going to eat. What I'm saying here is that Bruno's economists are going to say it's 5. The multiplier is 5. So if that's the case, city and county, you need to give us, I don't know, make up a number, $100,000 to bring the concert here. Because if you do that, it's going to generate $500,000 of GDP, right? That in this simple example. And the city and county is going to be like, fuck, we got to do that, right? Spend the $100,000. But what I'm saying is that if they had at least taken this class, they would realize it's not going to exactly be 500. It's not going to be as low as nothing, but it's certainly going to be less than 500. And that's when you start getting into debates of, should we subsidize this? Which is now going back to the whole sports thing of, should we replace Aloha Stadium, right? I don't know, I've never been in it. It looks okay. I mean, it doesn't look fantastic, but it doesn't look really shitty. How was it for graduation? Seems like it'd be really big.
Yeah. Okay.
For the concert, I guess it's okay.
That was scary. I was like on the top.
It was just
And then-
hot.
Where's the heart thing at? Is it?
Oh, it's not Blaisdell.
That's the
But for like the
Blaisdell.
Toronto
Which is
concert-
another thing you need to, right? Which is another thing they talk about replacing, right? Oh, because right, they didn't do that like kickboxing or fight WWF thing, right?
UFC?
Yeah, UFC thing, yeah. Right? I mean, because they were saying, well, we can't do it in the Blaisdell because the Blaisdell's a dump.
I know they want to renovate Aloha Stadium or something.
Right, but I mean, it goes against two things again, right? It's us, the tax, right? We're all taxpayers here. We are paying for Aloha Stadium to be built. And then Bruno takes it from us when he, has the concert, right? Or, again, we'll all have to pay for the eventual replacement of the Blaisdell, but then Hart will, he'll get the benefit from it.
Yeah, because I was sitting on the top. And
Yeah.
then during the concert, Bruno was like, everyone start, like, what was that, stomping
Yeah,
their legs on
stomping
the
your
thing.
feet, yeah.
The thing was shaking. I was so scared.
See, you know what he's doing that for?
Oh,
He's
shit.
trying to break Aloha Stadium so that they'll have to build a new one.
Yeah, everyone was so
That's what he's doing
scared.
to me. So here's the contractionary fiscal policy. So what you can see here is that this is reducing the planned expenditures and obviously in the iterative process, reducing the equilibrium level of income. So on the one side, we had expansionary policy, fiscal policy, here you see contractionary fiscal policy. So it was pretty, so for the state, for that concert, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about for graduation?
Full House?
Not really one little section.
Why did they do it there then? Didn't they?
Well, because our graduating class was really big. We had like 1,000 something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's big for Hawaii, right? Where was this? Which high school is this? Oh, Campbell. Okay, that makes sense. Don't they have that like big field though?
I don't think they can fit everyone.
Did I tell you my Campbell story about the fire? I had to teach early college there. This is like 2 years ago. I did teach it in this English teacher's room. It was her room. It was in the new building. It was right across from the faculty and staff lounge.
Also, Saber Hall.
Yeah, on the second floor, right up at the top of the stairs. So I had to teach this class. It was Econ 130. It was Econ 130, so principles of micro. They didn't give me any instruction about how to teach high school students. I think they just thought that college students are just like high school students or high school students are just like college students, but they're totally not. And I'd never been in a high school since I went to high school. I don't hang out at high schools. So, like the whole idea of like being the cool kid because I could actually drive a car, like all those kind of notions, like that was there. But then also, I never took attendance, and I only found out at the end of the semester I was supposed to take attendance, but no one ever told me, and I don't take attendance. So, right, because I treat you like adults, and I don't take attendance, but those guys are not adults. And so there was like one person who ended up getting pregnant that semester, and no, she got pregnant. Then they asked me, does she ever go to class? And I said, I don't know. And it turned out she got pregnant that semester while I was teaching, making it sound like I was the one who did it or something. Like, but I'm saying, like, they were saying, like, it was kind of my fault because I didn't make sure she always came to class. And so she got into the trouble by skipping my class, and I didn't take attendance. And I was giving out the bathroom pass too often whenever someone wanted it. I was just letting people have it. So anyway, I'm not a good high school teacher. But really the best way that I'm not a good high school teacher is because the fire alarm went off. And, when the fire alarm goes off, it's just like, okay, let's leave. So I just took my bag and I just said, okay, class is canceled. Let's all leave. I wasn't supposed to cancel class. And I was also supposed to make sure that everyone got out of the classroom. I think I left like in the beginning or in the middle of the line of people leaving. It should have been like you're like a captain of a ship and you go off last. I didn't know that. No one told me. So that was my first and only time teaching at Campbell High School.
High school, never again.
Yeah, never again. Yeah, Campbell High School. They're the Sharks, aren't they? Or the Sabres. Yeah, but each class then gets their own like animal, right? Sea animal.
Like our graduate class is the class of the pandas.
Oh God! How can you say that without snorting?
Yeah. Right when I started trying to hold my mouth,
We went so hard though.
Yeah.
We went so hard.
I like pandas.
Yeah, but that's not a fierce creature that's gonna like.
Hey, a panda can maul you. Like
a
a mama panda trying to protect her cub.
Yeah, no,
A lot of our
yeah.
decisions made by our student government was pretty underwhelming. That was a pretty underwhelming decision, as well as our graduation song was really underwhelming.
Melania's was bad though. The Trojan.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What were we? We were knights, which is like medieval, but that's what you get for Catholics. It's all about knights. Okay, so here's our contractionary policy. Okay, now this function, again, I'm not going to ask you to solve this primarily because it's like a Where's Waldo puzzle with all the missing things here. Yeah.
So wait, the solving for y is different for contractionary and expansionary?
No, it's different for taxes using it with fiscal policy versus government spending. That's where it's different. So you learned in principles of macro the government spending multiplier, but there's also a tax multiplier, which is what this is. So in the tax multiplier, it's MPC over 1 minus MPC delta y delta t, which means that the tax multiplier is actually smaller. The tax multiplier is smaller than the government spending multiplier, because this was a 1, right, for the government spending multiplier. This is some number less than 1 here for the tax multiplier. Same equation, except different numerator. So this is a reason why, among many reasons, this is a reason why economists generally critique tax changes as stimulating the economy. I mean, yes, I like what Trump did in the sense that my taxes will be lower. As a person, I like that. As a person who's not poor, I like that especially because he actually helped my tax situation more than your shitty tax situations, right? So if we're doing a whole, wearing a top hat, wearing being a rich person here, comparatively speaking, my taxes will be lower as a percent now than yours. That makes me happy. But in terms of the multiplier, I'm not spending more money because I'm saving more in taxes, right? I'm just saving more now, right, is all that I'm doing. Savings is okay on a personal micro basis, but it's not good on a macro basis. Meaning, yes, you stimulate the economy somewhat, right, by cutting taxes. But I'm not going to spend all that money. So every dollar that the government spends, we're saying it's a factor. Let's just say it's a factor of 5. But let's just take the same thing. Let's make it $1. Then it would be 0.8 over 1 minus 0.8. So then we'd have 0.8 over 0.8 over 0.2, which would be 4. Oh, well, this is good. Get my nano white. What I need here. Yeah, there we go. There's my factor of 4. There's with the missing minus signs. But smaller. And it's even smaller when you think of all the ways that we avoid paying what we're supposed to pay in taxes, right? By tax deductions, you know, I guess lying and cheating, I guess, as well. But I mean, by engaging in purchases only designed to reduce my tax burden, right? That I, as a richer person, can afford, and you losers, as poor people, cannot. So, right? So again, it's creating class distinctions, you know, income class distinctions, and the tax multipliers are smaller. So any politician that tells you that taxes should be lower as a way to stimulate the economy, their argument's a little bit weaker than someone saying the government should spend more money to stimulate the economy.
They're spending more money more.
Exactly.
So does that mean that government should increase the taxes so that they have more money to spend?
So yes, but even when they increase taxes, it doesn't hurt the economy as much as people think, right? Because the multiplier can work in the opposite direction. It's certainly the case that if the government raises my taxes, I spend less. But then if they turn around and take that extra amount they're taxing me and then spend it, then yeah, it's great. So it'll take $4 out of the economy by taxing me, but then it'll stimulate it by $5. So the net change will be 1, right? A net difference of 1. So it actually will stimulate the economy more, as long as they're taxing me and then spending it. Now the problem with Democrats is that they don't, right? They just spend a lot and then don't tax as much, right? The problem with Republicans would be almost kind of the same thing, right? Increase, I mean, certainly the Trump administration, exactly. But they just focus on the one thing that they're doing, right? So for Republicans, they would focus on the fact that they're cutting taxes, and for Democrats, they generally focus on the fact that they're spending more money to stimulate the economy.
So political, why don't they just put it together?
No, they really should. I mean, because think about it, when you hear Trump doesn't, I mean, he does talk about the military spending, but if he were, I shouldn't give him advice because he obviously has gone farther in life than I, but, right, I mean, if you were talking about the stimulative things he's done for the economy, he should be talking about all the military spending, but he's not. Instead, when he's saying that the economy is doing well, he's talking about the fact that he cut taxes. Right? It should be the other way around, right? He should be focusing on the fact that he's doing all this military spending. Yeah, I mean, it's at least more factually accurate.
So for every unit of tax put on their tax, for every unit of tax,
Additional tax,
people spend $4, 4 units less.
so what happens, right? So the iterative process for that would be is that I'm taxed an additional $1. And what that means is that my disposable income now reduced by $1. And so because my disposable income is reduced by $1, now I don't go to 7-Eleven, right? And now 7-Eleven cuts back a shift because I'm not going there for Slurpees anymore, et cetera, right? So it's a factor of 4 because I'm not building the thing originally. All that I'm doing is sucking money out of the economy, or sucking money out of consumers' pockets, $1. Whereas for government spending, I've now built the rail, that's my 1, and then you've got the factor of 4, right? So that's why there's that difference between the two. Because the government's just taking the money and not actually, right? So if we're not saying that they actually spent it, they're just taxing the money, then all you get is the reduction, but nothing that the government built. So in a better situation, they would be doing both.
So this multiplier is assuming that the government spends the money that they get back from taxes?
No. So in this one, right? In this, they're just assuming that they're taxing the money. Eventually, when you are probably late middle age, right, your 40s or your 50s, you're going to probably have to pay more in taxes, but the government's not going to be able to spend the money because they're going to have to pay back the deficits that were incurred by my generation and earlier generations, right? Which is right now what's happening to me, right? My generation, right? Generation X is having to pay for what the baby boomers did, right? So you're going to have to pay for what the X's did, right? And it's just a generational screw you, you know. Each generation is getting screwed over by the previous generation.
So the best way to put it in words is what? Right.
So the best way to put this into words would be, for the government spending multiplier, why is it so big? It is big because a thing is being bought or built, right, like the rail, but then also there's a lot of consumption related to that initial spending amount. For the tax multiplier, why it is smaller, isolated by itself, it is smaller because what's happening is I'm taking a dollar out of my disposable income, but then all that's being lost is all that other consumption that my dollar would have generated. So I'm not getting that initial building of the thing, right? So the best case scenario is when you do both, right? Because then essentially what we're saying is that if rail is fully paid for, and we just said we're going to fully pay for it with taxes, then the economy would be brought down by a factor of 4 because it's going to tax us. Right? Let's just say it was $1, right? Then, right, that we got the thing to build it was $1. Then our taxes would have went up by $1, and the two would have equaled out. But what we're saying is that with the multiplier, it brought down by a factor of 4 because of the tax multiplier, but brought up by a factor of 5 because of the government spending. Exactly.
So just looking only the tax, every 1 unit tax, real expenditure goes down to 4 units.
Yes, real expenditure. Equilibrium income goes down by 4 units.
Okay.
Yep.
And which we feed back into here and we go to 5 units.
Exactly. Yep.
I get
Yep.
it.
Okay, we've already talked about this. These are just the things that reduce the actual size of the thing that we're talking about. Okay, so this is just showing you what different Keynesian crosses would look like. I don't want to spend too much time on it because you can follow these slides on your own. But you can see here that the way the Keynesian cross starts to get generated is you can see some change happening and there being a different level of equilibrium income. Again, you saw the beginnings of this in principles, but we certainly never talked about this in principles. But the idea is different levels of investment generate different levels of equilibrium income. So now we need to construct the IS curve from our Keynesian cross. Okay. So the IS curve is telling us about equilibrium in the goods market. The LM curve, which we're going to look at after this, is equilibrium in the money market. So two markets, goods market and money market. We're going to start off with the goods market. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to graph out the interest rate with the actual output level, Y. And obviously we're missing a minus sign here. So what we're saying here is that there's the equilibrium is going to be a function of the interest rate, R, as well as my disposable income, as well as my fixed government's expenditures. Okay. And what we're saying is whenever the IS curve, whenever the Keynesian cross is in equilibrium, that's going to be a point for the IS curve. So we're going to use the Keynesian cross to generate the IS curve. But the IS curve is only going to show the points of equilibrium. So this is like the solo graph, right? Remember how the solo graph was only showing us the steady state levels? That's what this is kind of doing. It's doing kind of the same thing here. So it's my spending is equal to my disposable income plus the investment, which is now a function of the interest rate plus G. Notice here that the difference is, instead of investment being exogenous, now it is a function of the interest rate. Right, going back to this was a fixed investment level. I was not a function of the interest rate. Right, going back to here, right, you can see that right here. I was given to us, it was exogenous. Now we're saying is that it actually changes based on the interest rate. So, this is an important slide. If you don't get very much from today's lecture, this would be an important slide to get out of today's lecture. Is when the interest rate falls, so R2 is less than R1. When the interest rate falls, people buy more capital goods, right? People do more inventories. If you look at housing sales on the island, housing sales are near their lows from, I think, 2013 or 2014 right now on the islands, primarily because interest rates are high. I guess I got in the bonus rate. Right, and the idea is that people are gonna forego or delay their purchase of a home based on what the interest rate, what the reading interest rate level is. Okay, so with that very simple understanding, if the interest rates fall, then people engage in more investment, businesses engage in more investment, shifting this up. Which means that my equilibrium level is now high. Which means I can now derive what's the relationship between these interest rates and this y. So you want this to be a drop-down graph like this is here. If you think back to principles of micro, remember how we derived the demand curve from the difference curves and the budget constraints? This is kind of the same kind of logic that's being used to construct this here. And as the interest rate falls from R1 to R2, the equilibrium level of income increases. So what this highlights for you, what is so important about this is the way that the Keynesian cross is used to graph out what the IS curve looks like. This is graphing out how is the Keynesian cross used to derive the IS curve. And we're going to use the IS curve together with the LM curve to derive the AD curve. So we have multiple derivations going on here. So far, so good. My graduating high school graduating class at 1,800 people was in my graduating class. I think we just did it in our gym, I think we just did it in our gym. And we had some like local yokel newscaster did the commencement speech. What was her name? Kathy Michelby, that was her name. And then she ended the speech by saying, I gotta go do the news. I guess you were supposed to think she was fancy because she's the news. Yeah, well, when you're in high school, it seems pretty fancy, I think. And you just realize the world's a pretty shitty place. Sorry, there you go. That's all right, no worries. How about you, Ian? Who was your high school commencement speaker? Do you remember?
A World War II veteran.
They've got it so easy. They had a shitty situation. And it's like, dude, Nazis are bad. Like, how hard is it to fight against, right? Evil's harder to detect these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or it's more nuanced, right? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, yeah, if like the Klan comes, it's easy to hate them, but what about, I don't know. People, I don't know. The thing I was reading today was that story of, remember there was like all this controversy about GoFundMe and that guy that was like homeless and gave money to like, apparently it turns out that it was all like a plot. It was a scam.
I read that on the news today.
Like, come on, like this is a shitty place. Like,
Oh, there's also another one.
He's getting arrested for something.
yeah, so it turns out that the story was this woman, like bad part of town, car runs out of gas, and this like homeless guy gives her his last $20 so she can buy gas so she can get out of the bad part of town. And then the couple is like so thankful to this like homeless guy that they like create a GoFundMe page for him, and it raises like, oh, like $200,000 or something big. $400,000 for this like homeless guy. And then I think the homeless guy said like something must have gone bad in this deal, because then the homeless guy was like, they totally never gave me the
Yeah,
money.
they ripped him off.
Yeah.
367,000.
So, because right, so this is like a drug deal, right? Because what are you gonna do when you've done something illegal and the parties don't enforce the contract, right? So basically, if the couple had never, if they had done what they had promised to do in their illegal transaction, probably no one would have been the wiser. And
Did you hear about Keaton? Keaton, the boy who got bullied.
no.
I guess like the mom posted a video online of him getting bullied by other people, and then like a bunch of like celebrities, like that dude from Captain America.
Oh yeah.
He invited him like, oh, you want to come over to the Avengers premiere with me and stuff like that. So everyone felt like
Yeah.
sympathetic for him.
Yeah.
So the mom started a GoFundMe for him, and the people kept donating. It reached like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then some celebrity asked, why is there a GoFundMe for your son getting bullied? Like,
Yeah, what you gonna do with it? Yeah.
and then the mom was like, just to raise money, and then they found out, and then
Yeah.
found out the wife is like racist. So
Yeah.
they
See,
got away with it,
I don't know, dude.
and the whole thing was a stage 2. Him acting like getting bullied. It was a stage 2.
We should totally do that in this class. Hey, Levi, come over here. I'm going to punch you really fast and stuff. And we'll start a whole thing about like professors bullying their students. And then Kristen, you could be like, dude, he got beat up by his professor. I want to start a GoFundMe page. And then the three of us will share in the money.
All right, that's
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. And then Cash and Ian can now enforce our
I'll be
content.
the video guy.
Yeah, you'll be the videographer, and Ian will be, God, what is your role going to be?
No one's gonna cheat.
Oh, accountant.
He'll be the student that just looks shocked.
No.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, we always need one of those. Like, dude, what are you doing, man? I can't believe you're doing
All you
that.
guys do is
And then you got to pan over to that. Yeah, exactly. Oh, but now this is all on video.
he's got the right face. He's got the right face to do.
Yeah. Are you a good actor? And Kristen, can you cry on demand?
Yeah, she can.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
We're
My
gonna need that.
boyfriend. Oh my God.
He's great at that.
But we have to do like fake things. Like I gotta be like, like your shoe has to like fly up in the air when I do that.
Do you think one of these chairs?
Oh yeah, like WWE style. Yeah. But we gotta like pre-break it and then like break so that it breaks over time. Easy. Why are we going to college? Why are you guys going to college? You just would have made several $100,000.
That was the con.
Man, why am I doing this job? Okay, so the question is why then, this helps us understand why the IS curve then has a negative slope to it. So just like when we derived the demand curve, we could see that falling prices led people to buying more, but that as they bought more stuff with a regular demand curve, they didn't enjoy going to Bruno Mars 3 times. So the third time they went to the concert, they weren't willing to pay as much. That helped us understand demand, right? The idea, why was demand downward sloping? Law of diminishing marginal utility, right? That we could understand the demand curve being downward sloping through the indifference curves and the budget constraints. Well, what this does, right, is we can understand why is IS downward sloping? Because as the interest rate falls, people, businesses increase their investment spending, which leads to planned spending increasing. And that as that happens, if we're still in equilibrium, then the actual spending has to increase as well. So it's a 3-step process that we understand through the Keynesian cross of interest rates fall, right? Inventories rise, and then spending matches those now higher inventory levels. I'll repeat that again. Interest rates fall, which causes inventory levels to rise. And it happens because, right, businesses are then saying, well, it's really cheap to just buy a lot of inventory, homes, etc. interest rates fall, inventory levels rise, and as inventory levels rise, actual spending rises. Because, right, I have to hire people to build all this inventory that I'm then selling to the other manufacturer.
And inventory level is PE, right?
Yeah, our planned spending, yes.
So we're planning
Yep.
to spend.
So again, the only difference between Y and PE is that in PE, this is our investment plus inventory levels. But the difference between these two is what is unplanned. And what we're saying here is that that's our iterative process that the Keynesian cross takes care of, is the catch-up time it takes for our buildup of inventory to be reflected in actual spending going on.
Oh, I see. That's why we assume in this model that it's equilibrium.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Because again, the IS curve, going back to this, the IS curve is only capturing equilibrium points on the Keynesian cross. So top graph is your Keynesian cross, bottom graph is your IS curve.
Oh, I see. So
Yep.
P goes up, Y goes up the same factor.
Exactly.
Y
Yep.
is PE.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Got it.
Okay. So now we need the loanable funds model. So we need to combine now with the IS curve a loanable funds model. And we need that because we need to know how is the interest rate getting determined. Right? In the previous slide with just the IS curve, we just said interest rate is changing. We need to know about the loanable funds model to know what's happening to the interest rate that leads to the IS model. So here, this is a little bit easy to understand because all we're saying here is that as the interest rate goes up, savings, our level of savings is changing here. And what we're seeing here, this is doing as the interest rate goes up, my savings is fixed. My savings is exogenous. The money supply is exogenous and given to me by the central bank. But that clearly my demand for investment goods falls. Because, right, businesses aren't going to want to spend as much as the interest rate goes up. So what we're seeing here with the supply of loanable funds, the supply of loanable funds is going to decrease as the interest rate goes up. Our equilibrium, as we can see, is reduced. So basically, this is essentially what the Federal Reserve is doing right now, is they are reducing the money supply. And that's what you see here. You see a contractionary monetary policy driving up the interest rate. You should add, if you want to add a subtitle to this slide, you would put on here, contractionary monetary policy. The contractionary, how does the interest rate go up? Contractionary monetary policy reduces the money supply, drives up the interest rate, also reducing investment levels. What I just said, right? People are buying less houses. People are building less houses because they're more expensive to buy. Translating it to lower equilibrium on the IS curve.
So does that mean the other one was a extension?
Well, we didn't do it earlier. Are you talking about
The one to get the IS?
IS curve? Yeah, that was expansion. Yep. So that would be, if you wanted to look at it that way, that would have been, you're talking about this one?
Yeah.
Yep, that would have been expansionary monetary policy. Would have gotten you the lower interest rate. And so this would be your contractionary monetary policy that feeds into the interest rate. So these, you will notice, is a side-by-side rather than a top-down. So we're already looking at this, so I'm not gonna, I want to make sure we get things done here. What time are we at? 5:21. Let's take a break now to 5:30. I'm hoping that we'll get to around slide 50 by the end of today, and then we'll cover the rest 2 weeks from now. Okay, so let's take a break right now, and then we'll pick it up. Pause recording. Don't do it. Don't do it.
That was like the only time I ever used.
Well, I don't know. Cancer-ridden substitute teacher. He should get the money. I don't have any problem with that. Okay, so, okay. Let's continue on here. See, and I do this all, and you know what? It's going to be like karma's going to get back at me. Something bad's going to happen to me, and now I'm going to have to use it. And none of you are going to give to it because Jay just told us that I give to it. So what? You got, I don't know, big bad disease? Screw him. Levi will give me a bag of fig bars. Asshole. It's like, asshole, I need money. I don't need fig bars. I don't care what we make.
That's what friends are for.
Exactly. That's what friends are for. Exactly. They'll be like, what, you gave money to a cat? You can't give money to me? Cash will be like, he's not a substitute. He's got money. Okay, so I've got my IS curve. Now I need my LM curve. So I need now liquidity preferences. So we get this all from John Maynard Keynes. And when you think of the book that John Maynard Keynes wrote, his book was called Theory of Money and Interest. Theory of Money and Interest, right? So basically, his revolutionary text in the 1930s was all about liquidity preferences. Why do people hold the money balances that they do? Not surprisingly, it's determined by interest rates. And so we have a supply of real money balances which are fixed. It's fixed because it's given to us by the central bank. So the central bank is supplying the real money balances. What's making it real is the fact that I'm dividing it by the price level, right? That's what makes a nominal value real. So I've got a nominal value of the money, dividing it by the price level makes it real. This is all given, it's exogenous because it's given to us by the central bank. But then I have my demand for real money balances, which is inverse to the interest rate. Why is it inverse? Because if I'm not holding money balances, I'm saving it. And if the interest rate's high, why would I want to spend a lot of money? Right? Because I'd rather save it. Right? When interest rates are high, I don't want to spend a lot of money. I want to save it, which is why you stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates, right? Because it gets people to buy things that they wouldn't have otherwise bought. People bought a lot of cars in 2010, 2011. People bought a lot of houses in 2010, 2011. One of the many reasons why they did that is because the interest rates were so low. And the interest rates were made low by the central bank to stimulate the economy. So, if we look at that equilibrium amount then, it's determined, right? We could just meet supply and demand, right? Nothing too interesting here. But what that gets us is that interest rate. So what we're looking for here are, we are looking for equilibrium. What happens when it's above R1? When it's above R1, the supply exceeds the demand. And basically you have lots of money out there looking for a home. Until the money is actually lent out to a person, it's just sitting in my vault. So what am I going to do? I'm going to say, come on, Ian, what if I just lower the interest rate a little bit more for you? Will you borrow the money then, right? So you see that iterative process until it reaches here. On the other side, if it's too low, there's too much demand for balances and not enough money out there, right? Which then leads lenders to say, geez, everyone wants a loan. I don't have that much cash. raise the interest rate, right? Because I can make more money on it. And right, what we see here as well is this is the classic way that the Federal Reserve, or any central bank for that matter, engages in policy. Is if it increases the interest rate, it's then essentially reducing the real money balances. Meaning that the central bank, when it announces that it's increasing the interest rate, it's not actually changing the interest rate. The Federal Reserve has no control over any interest rate in this economy. Even the Federal Reserve, the federal funds rate. If you pay particular attention to the adjectives being used, the Federal Reserve does not change the interest rate, they change the federal funds target rate. Meaning, the Federal Reserve is announcing to you, we would like to get R2. They have no control over R2 because the Federal Reserve is not lending out money. Well, they are, but it's to stimulate the economy. But they're saying we want it to be R2. But that's a signal to the market to say, dude, they're going to reduce the M from M1 to M2 to get that R2. I'll repeat that again. So what is happening here is when the Federal Reserve says that we are going to engage in contractionary monetary policy, which is what they're doing now, then let's look at it. Let's look at the FOMC statement. Let's humor me here. God, that GoFundMe thing is going to bother me for a while. The world's a shitty place. And if you don't know that yet,
oh, I know it.
Yeah, it's a totally shitty place. I mean, I'm not going to fuck you over, but someone's going to fuck you over. It's not going to be me, but it's going to be someone.
It's the most complicated game of Oregon Trail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then you die of dysentery. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, God, yeah. Someone always just, Monopoly, yeah. Yeah, and he brought oh my God, that was so fantastic. He brought so many chicken nuggets, yeah. So what are we at right here now? Let's just go on the Federal Reserve site, federalreserve.gov, and I'm just going to look at press releases here because I just want to find the one here. There we go. So what we're seeing here, oh, sorry, I got to share this so that people can see this. Oh, sorry, I got to mistook this. I want to share this. Okay, share. So what you see here in the third paragraph is, in view of realized and expected labor market conditions and inflation, the committee decided to maintain the target rate for the federal funds rate at 2 to 2.25%. The Federal Reserve does not actually determine the federal funds rate. That's determined by banks doing the normal transactions that they're going to engage in. But what we're being told is that the Federal Reserve is going to look at what that federal funds rate is, and they are going to change the money supply to achieve that range of 2 to 2.25%. So they don't control the R, they control the M, but they're going to change the M to get the R, is what we're being told.
Like shown in the graph.
Exactly.
In order to
Yeah.
change R2, you have to move the money supply towards the left.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they are announcing our, sorry, now I gotta show this. So they are announcing, they are saying that this is going to be 2 and a 2.5 to 2 1/4, or a 2 1/4 to 2.5. But the market, or what the Federal Reserve is actually going to do, is it's going to adjust the M from M1 to M2. Okay, so I'm not going to do this just so I can save time here. I want to save time. Okay. So what that means as we continue on with this is, so here's my demand for real money balances, M over P, right? And that is equal then to my liquidity preferences, which are a function of my interest rate and my level of income. Just like the IS curve was my Keynesian cross, what this is now going to do for my LM curve is it's going to look where I achieve equilibrium for my real money balances. This is going to try to find where I can get equilibrium for my real money balances. So we are going to, just like IS curve was trying to find all the points where planned expenditures equaled actual expenditures, now for my LM curve, I'm going to be looking for everywhere where my real money balances equate each other in terms of supply and demand for all the given interest rates. Meaning, I need to create a drop-down graph. And instead of M over P, I'm going to be looking at Y. I'll pause here one minute. So as I change the interest rate, it changes my level of income, right? So in this case here, by increasing the interest rate, my level of Y increases. Why is that the case? Right? Let me go back to here. Right? We saw here that if liquidity was a function of the interest rate, as opposed to liquidity as a function of the interest rate and the level of income, if the level of income is higher, then people hold more money. Right? I mean, sometimes it's surprising how much I make and how little I actually have in my wallet, which is absolutely, I have, I think, 60 cents in my car and change, but I have no cash in my wallet, right? And my checking account, well, I don't get paid till the 20th, so keep that in mind. I think I have like $200 in my checking account. I mean, I have incredibly low real money balances right now, but I get paid on Tuesday. So, you know, then I'm like a drunk poet, right? Until the 5th. So every 5th and 20th I get paid, right? So it's feast and famine. But what we're saying here is that for people that have more income, that there's higher real money balances. Or instead of income, if you just said the economy is bigger, people hold more money, which then means, okay, more money existing or a bigger economy, LM curve with this higher interest rate is now associated with higher levels of income. So these are my demand for real money balances and all the points of equilibrium. If the income levels were lower, then people hold even less cash. And basically what we're saying is that there's an equilibrium level of interest that's associated with that now lower equilibrium level. Ian, do you have more than that in your checking account?
$200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The irony of that is lost on me. Wow. I'm a simple person. My rent's not due until I pay my rent. Sometimes it's shitty living in university housing. Sometimes it's nice. You get until the 5th to actually pay your rent, and they don't charge you anything extra. And if you're late, they charge you like something like 60 cents a day for every day you're late after the 5th. Well, like, who would pay your rent on time then?
Wait, I actually have a question
Yeah.
about my credit stuff. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, I just got one.
Yeah.
So every time I use my credit card, I see the transaction on it.
Yes.
I just literally manually pay it off like right there when I.
Why do you do that?
I don't know.
Just wait for
I
the
do
take
too.
take
I don't
the
know
interest.
because I just feel weird whenever like I don't like seeing.
Who's it with? Is it with American Express, City?
OA
Who's it-
State Federal Credit Union.
And it's a credit card.
It's a credit card, but the thing I'm wondering is why is my current balance less than my statement balance? When it says I already paid my statement balance off because I'm not even paid.
Probably because you have some pending charges, maybe. So it takes like a few days for once you make a charge for it to actually go through.
Because what I thought was that maybe because I paid it early, it's still not processed until the end of the month since
That
it
could.
automatically pays as well.
So why are you paying it?
I have no clue. I don't know why.
Uh,
I just like to do. I don't know.
No, me too. Because then I always feel weird when I carry a balance.
Yeah.
But then again, I just got my credit card too. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it gave
Before
me
I
a
went
world
home.
of freedom when I got mine. Like,
exactly.
I'm able to use
Triple
time to my
level.
advantage to pay off things.
You and I, man.
So
You and I.
good.
Although again,
And
you
my
know,
credit limit was high right off the bat. because my credit
exactly.
score
And
was
you know
high.
what the irony is that his credit score is going to be higher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, your credit score is going to reflect the fact that what happens, the way that your credit score is calculated, is that it's going to say, oh, every month he has a balance of, on average, let's say $1,000. But he pays it off, right? But it's going to say, like, he's making wise use of his credit. He's borrowing money and then paying it back at the month.
I shouldn't do that.
You're not really doing
Yeah.
anything because your
So, like-
average monthly balance is going to be zero because you keep paying it
Yeah.
off.
See, like right here it says current balance 54, statement balance 64, 17. Well, when I go to payment history, it says I already paid the 64 off, which is kind of weird. I don't know why.
Oh, because I think what it's showing you is that it generated a statement of $64.
But I don't have to pay that one.
But exactly, you don't
Oh,
have.
okay.
That's why it says your
That's why I was
payment
like,
is zero.
I
Yeah, I wish I was, dude. I'm envious of you. I'm more of a Levi kind of person.
I'll probably because I thought the earlier you paid, the more better your credit score is.
No,
Because it
no.
shows
The
that you have
longer
to
you
pay.
wait, the better your credit score. Well, not you. It's complicated the way they get it, but
yeah, but don't you pay more interest?
yeah, but you might pay lower interest for bigger purchases. So the fact that I use my credit well, meaning I borrow money and I eventually pay it back, that's actually better for my credit score, which means that I'm going to probably get a cheaper rate on my mortgage because it shows that I will borrow money and not prepay it, and the bank will get to collect a lot of money from me. So they'll probably offer me a really low interest rate because they're going to want me to borrow from them.
A good credit score
Whereas
is
this guy's going to pay off his mortgage in 2 years. I'm going to take the full 30. So, you know, it's going to be easier for me to get a mortgage because
a good credit score is like 700, right?
700, 800. Yeah, I think it goes up to 800 or 850, I think. Yeah, as long as you're in above 600, you'll
Everything
get.
below is really bad.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really
I'm very
good.
proud of my credit score.
What's your
What is it?
710.
Oh,
That's good. I think mine is like 780, but
Yeah.
I've had longer to acquire
I
balances.
started paying bills at like 16, 17 years old. So
Where do you even find
by
that?
the time I got my house,
like your credit score.
Creditkarma.com.
Oh,
Yeah, no, you don't have to pay it. I mean, that's the one I use. Is that the one you use? Credit Karma?
I just get a free credit score review from LendingTree whenever I go.
See? Ian, what about you, man? How do you know your credit score? Do you know your credit
I
score?
get it directly from the agencies that do it.
Oh, yeah.
Union stuff.
Go to the source, yeah.
Well, when I signed up my first credit card,
Yeah.
which was Costco, they show you your credit score on the screen. Thank you. Here's your credit score. Here's what we're gonna give you.
Oh, and you got a free tote bag too, didn't you?
What's that?
Did you get a free tote bag too?
Oh, I think I might have.
I think they give you a cooler bag.
No.
Oh, yeah, they gave me a cooler bag when I got mine.
Oh, you have a Costco credit card too?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's super good.
exactly. Ah, it sounds like this
Maybe
class is a
they have to
commercial
convince
for.
you because you're so happy about it. So they're like, oh, you know.
Yeah, I was super happy.
Yeah, dude, you gotta be like a used car buyer, right? You
First credit
gotta
card ever.
not show it off. Yeah, you gotta.
They're like, your credit score is 610. Here you go. 6.5 limit.
And now you're going to town. Okay, so the question then is, why then is the LM curve increasing? So this is just articulating what I've just said, which would be if the income goes up, then people demand more money balances. But if the supply is fixed, then the only way I can meet all this demand is by raising the interest rates. That's all we're saying. If people have more money, they demand more money balances. If the supply is fixed, then the interest rate has to go up for the two markets to reach equilibrium. So we did Y is IS down. This is Y is ILM up. Sloped upwards. GoFundMe. That just bothers me. You know, it seems like innocent enough, you know? But now I'm really never going to do a GoFundMe. And I suspect most people don't know how they're getting screwed when they... I mean, you probably like this cat. What was the name of this cat again? Xander?
Yeah.
You probably liked Xander, but...
I actually never met that cat.
You should have given him 10. You should have given him $10, is what we're saying, instead of 8 and some change. After GoFundMe profited from Xander's
I think from now on,
misfortune.
I'd probably give it to
Yeah,
Apple Pay
like,
or something.
This is something with someone benefiting from someone else's misfortune.
Using for-profit objectives for them.
Yeah, it'd be like me stabbing you and then saying, "Hey, you want to go to Queens West? I'll drive you in my car for $15." It's essentially GoFundMe. See, when you see it like that, it seems quite. I stab and then I drive you where. Okay. Now, when we think about the Keynesians, it's not only about expansionary fiscal policy, which is the typical way we think of Keynesians, right? Expanded government to get us out of the Great Depression, but it's also shifting the money supply to shift the LM curve. So in this case here, I'm actually, what am I doing here? Am I engaging in contractionary or expansionary?
Contractionary.
Exactly, right? So I am basically reducing the money supply, shifting my LM curve to the left, which is the way then, as you see this here, is that for the same interest rate, it's reducing the income levels, or obviously for the same output level, I would have higher interest rates. So this would be contractionary monetary policy. Uber is going to do its IPO next year. It's widely expected. Guess how much money it lost in the third quarter? Uber has never made a profit. Just take a guess of how much they lost in the third quarter.
Around $1 billion.
$1 billion. $1 billion. How does the company?
The movie past two is falling apart.
Yeah, MoviePass. Yeah, MoviePass. Yeah. So what'd you guys do? Are you still doing MoviePass, or what are you doing now?
We still doing it. We never go to the movies.
So now they're just making money off of you.
Yeah, it's pretty much making money off of us right now.
My wife and I thought about joining the other one, cinema, but we didn't. I haven't done it yet. Because I can't do movies because the movies would be playing. It's not like I go to movies on Thursday night. Okay. So now we put it all together, IS and LM together. So what's nice about this is that the ISLM curve, put your Y here, your ISLM curve is determining for us two things, our equilibrium interest rate and our equilibrium level of income. So what's really cool about this graph is that this is revealing to us two markets that are in equilibrium simultaneously. Because the IS curve was all about what? The goods market. The LM curve was all about the money market. Now, this equilibrium then would be that both markets are in equilibrium. Ingenious shit. I mean, really, if you think about the great Adam, when we think of like the great economists, Adam Smith is always the one they talk about, but Keynes was so much smarter about things, really, when you think about it this way, right? I mean, it's so simplistic, yet it revolutionizes macroeconomic thought. You don't have macroeconomics until John Maynard Keynes, because now you're talking about how an economy reaches equilibrium all at once. in both the goods market and in the money market simultaneously. Determined by and by the way, Adam Smith, born June 5th, John Maynard Keynes, born June 5th, Scheiding, born June 5th.
What?
Yeah, so that's my joke of like I was born to be an economist.
No way, you have the same birthday as.
Yeah, Adam Smith and John Maynard Keynes. Yep. Yeah,
You know what's
economist.
so funny?
We were
What?
just talking about something the other day. I don't remember it, so I'm busy thinking about it.
No, like Levi came up
Yeah.
with this thing and he said we should call this the Scheiding model.
Oh,
And then he
damn.
was like, the Scheiding can be a world famous economist.
Yeah, dude, you should do it. And then we put it on the T-shirt too. Then.
Because we have ideas, but no one's gonna listen to us.
Yeah.
We're not credit economists, so
it
you
was
can
like
just you can
something
just go out there and
about,
talk about it.
Yeah, and
Listen
I'll create a
to it.
GoFundMe page too to get the money to do the whole thing too.
No, you don't.
Oh, yeah, okay. No,
I
but
was thinking about like good deeds.
we'll call it the Scheiding principle or the Scheiding theorem. You think,
Oh, you're talking about it in my family case.
or we could just call it Scheidingness.
What was it? Good deeds. People do more. People are less. Oh, greed. I remember now.
No.
Economics.
Yeah.
Is it
Pretty much
expenditure?
uses their model with an assumption that everyone does the most greediest option.
Mm-hmm.
They take the most greediest route. Like they will for sure like do what is the best interest for their group or
Mhm.
their household or firm,
Yeah.
right? But what if goodwill or
Mhm.
good deeds, right, is like so like in like it's like promoted now sort of, right?
Mhm.
There's GoFundMe pages
Yeah.
starting, all this stuff
Right, right,
about good deeds and goodwill.
Good karma.
If you
Yeah.
look at companies and you're learning about like in business communication class, they talk
Mhm.
about goodwill all the time now.
Yeah.
Goodwill
Yeah.
and doing all these public relations stuff. What if, like, because everyone is now no longer taking the greediest route
Mhm.
due to scarcity or whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually making different changes than we realize because we're not doing the greediest option. We're not.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
the signs of greed.
It's actually harder to identify the bad stuff then too, right?
Yeah, so which makes everything messed up, and
Yeah.
people can't, and economists can't see that because they're thinking about just the greediest option only.
Right, exactly. No, well, like this GoFundMe thing, right? This would fall into that principle, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, or no? I mean, wouldn't it? Because you would say, oh, we're all doing these really nice things, and it's not the greediest option. But then the creators of GoFundMe were actually greedy. They just hit it with a
Well, GoFundMe is a kind of a poor example, but I'm saying like people are more likely to do other like charitable or goodwill stuff. They're not limited to like GoFundMe, or
They're more
willing
likely to
give
do-
somebody $10,
yeah,
or they might more likely to like do charitable activities,
yes.
which
But
is
by the act of doing that, what happens? You're saying, by the
Or
act
like,
of
okay.
being more charitable,
which
at
is,
least outwardly, what happens?
what we predict
Yes.
people taking the route, right,
Yeah.
to make these changes happen
Yeah.
in whatever models, right,
Mhm.
is assuming that people will, let's say interest rates, okay, this is a really quick and dirty example.
Okay.
Interest rates are high, people will definitely will be less likely to buy a house during that time, right?
Mhm.
But what if they do it anyway because they want to be nice for somebody,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And this is really extreme.
Sure.
I'm not sure everyone's gonna do that.
Mhm.
Let's say everyone had a lot of money
Mhm.
and they did that.
Mhm.
They're not taking the expected route that they would do.
The greedy route,
The
yeah,
greedy
that a
route.
rational person would. Yep,
They're
they're
actu-
acting
they're
irrationally.
actually doing more charitable goodwill things.
Yes.
And that's throwing everything off. And what if that small, minuscule, what you see minuscule amounts of goodwill is
Yeah.
now a lot more than before
Yeah.
because it's popular to be charitable and goodwill. It gives you good reputation.
Isn't there also diminishing returns then to the charitable things, right? Because then I could be like, I stubbed my toe. I'm going to create a GoFundMe page for it. No, but see, here's how I could use the GoFundMe thing, right? So like, if we look at all that stuff on GoFundMe, it's just like, looks like just life, right? Like shitty things happen to good people all the time. That cat didn't deserve to lose a leg, right? But how did we so let's say 100 years ago, right? We'd raise money because like a really, really bad thing happened, like a nun got killed in a war, right? So we'd raise a lot of money for like a really, really good person happening a really bad things. but there were also cats that got hit by cars and lost their legs and died. But now that not only are we giving money for the nuns murdered in war, but also the cats that lost their leg, meaning that we're funding projects that we probably shouldn't have even been funding anymore because we're almost insuring against the bad things that happen in life on a typical basis, right? So there's also diminishing returns to things that we're trying to correct for.
That is true, but I feel like what I'm trying to say is more general than that.
But do you think mine would follow as a consequence of following your theory?
Yes, partially.
Okay.
But it wouldn't explain everything because there's also some situations where it's not about fundraising, but rather there's the greediest option that's in that party's best interest, and there's another option they could take, but we're assuming that they won't take that because everyone's doing it in their own best interest because of scarcity.
Ooh, and the fact that we all now become immune to someone always trying to dig in our pockets and get something out of us, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think, Kristen, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to give money to a cat with a missing leg. But the idea is that maybe you wouldn't have, but now you're inundated with GoFundMe requests that you did.
Well, no, the person who owns the cat,
Yeah.
she told me about it. She's like, hey, she told me the story about how her cat got
So how
hit.
could you say no?
Huh?
And so how could you say no?
Yeah, she was like, I created this, and then she's like, I created this GoFundMe page.
So what did you do for the substitute teacher? Is that what you did for the substitute teacher? Like how
Well,
could you say no?
No, I couldn't. Like when I saw it, I was like, I have to donate.
Anyway, so we're just making a joke that
No, totally. We should.
if that really is the reason why
Yeah.
it is, right? Then,
Yeah.
and we could prove it. No one would probably listen to us. So we
Yeah.
should tell you about
Yeah,
it.
no, totally. Well, now we're making a video, so now I'll take out this portion of the video, and we'll say, I'll have to call it something though. Theory of maximum principle of maximum welfare. The Sharding principle of maximum welfare.
We have some time to think about it.
Yeah, okay.
But like, basically, if we could prove this and
Yeah.
show that stuff,
Yeah.
it could maybe explain why things are not going the way they are right now. But that was just. But once again, I don't have a degree in economics.
Well, we need to articulate. Yeah, we also need someone that does good marketing.
They
That
would listen to us, but then if
they'll listen to
you
me
could
more
figure it
likely.
out
Yeah.
and you got it out there, like then maybe you could be the next.
Well, we need Ian's cash to promote this too. So he's got more money balances. So we need.
All I ask is I just get a little bit.
No, I'll give you a little credit. Yeah, no. Now this.
Bring me up.
Yeah, I'll bring it. Coattails and all. Yeah, this is a really good slide though. This is again fully copied. I did not make this, but this is really good for you sorting out all that's happening here. The big picture is exactly true. So we basically did this, and then we're going to put it with this with the aggregate demand curve, and then we kind of already saw these previews. Basically, we've now covered this, and now we need to see how this leads to this, and then we put it together with this to explain the previous topic, which was economic fluctuation. So in essence, what we did last week, or 2 weeks ago, was we did this. We went from the green to here. And then we just done this, right? And so now we're kind of meeting in the middle is what we're doing. So, so topic 8 was the green to the salmon and orange, or sunset. And then we went from the ivory and, what do we call that, the Tiffany blue, to the salmon. Yeah, it's not really Tiffany blue, but it's something blue. Tiffany blue and eggshell. Would that white be eggshell? Tiffany blue and eggshell to the salmon, and then salmon and the sunset to the.
Oh, you got the vermilion right there.
Yeah, but what would we call that green? Sea green? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that would be. Okay. So now this gets us to slide 49 here. I was trying to think though too, it's off topic, but when you think of like the identifying smells that just completely calm you and bring back nostalgia, what would you say is a smell that makes you feel nostalgic and happy? I already know mine.
This is weird.
A smell.
This is weird.
Yes.
Japanese cigarettes.
Yeah, Japanese cigarettes. I do know that smell. It's not what I know me from my childhood, but yes, it is
I was born
a
Japan.
distinctive smell. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
And my Japanese family
Yeah.
all smoke cigarettes.
yeah.
I pretty much.
So when you're having a down day.
Warm
Smoke a
cinnamon
Japanese-
apple cider.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's what I
that
used
was
to do. But I used to like keep like boxes and like
Yeah. it's cigarette.
Asiatic cigarettes.
Yeah.
My favorite ones was like Nevius, a double
Yeah.
popper like menthol citrus one.
Yeah.
And then the other one was like Espresso. That's probably my favorite one all the time. That one's not Japanese, it's actually Korean. But the flavor on that one.
Dude, the Koreans smoke more than the Japanese. Dude, Koreans are like smokestacks.
Yeah,
They
that cigarette tastes like a fresh cup of coffee. It's freaking. I was like, what?
Yeah. Is the cider have to be warm or cold? You said warm?
It's hot.
Hot?
Yeah, so it's like cinnamon
Yeah.
apple cider. It's like what my like I always drank that during like Christmas. and,
Yeah.
like, when we went camping, that'd be like my camping drink.
Yeah, so I guess you're gonna have to have it next week. What about you, Cash?
This doesn't make me happy, but you know, like whenever you go to the city bus,
Yeah.
that smell.
No, I've never been on city bus here.
There's just like a distinct
Never had to
smell.
ride it. Thank
that
God.
I just can always remember it. I
Yeah.
don't
Or
know.
maybe the smell of pisses are going up the stairs. What about you, man?
Probably blackberry cobbler.
Oh, yeah. See, mine is a box
Oh.
of crayons.
I know which one from mine. You know, like Cinnabon whenever we pass by it.
Oh, yeah.
I love that smell. Like Pizza Hut or something.
That's fine marketing. Right?
Crayons
Yeah,
and
it's actually-
Play-Doh. Crayons
love
and
that.
Play-Doh.
That
for me.
one and what's it called? Cookie Corner.
Oh, Cookie Corner.
Oh, jeez.
Like the wind blows out. You're
They
like,
do
oh,
that on
so good.
purpose.
Oh, and the Burger King. Right, Burger King's does that where you can smell like the flame broiledness. Because whenever I had to go teach at Campbell, I would drive from here and I'd have to go to Campbell, and then there was that Burger King on the way, and I would always stop at it on the way back. So it'd be like, man, the future of our country is really shitty. Now I go to Burger King, make myself a crown, and eat my meal, and then go. I get the crown. I get the crown whenever I go because I gotta give back to my kid, and then yeah. Oh, geez, yeah, frame broiled. No, it's crayons and Play-Doh for me. Crayons and Play-Doh. Okay. So here's our ISLM curve. We need now to derive the AV curve. So now we need to combine our two parts of the big picture together. Okay, so let's combine them. So here's our ISLM curve. This would be simultaneous equilibrium in the goods market and in the money market, determining for us the interest rate and the level of income. Now, what we can start to do is we could look at this slide here. What happens? So there's missing minus sign too, if you just keep it in mind. Basically, when it looks like that and there's too big of a gap, it's probably either a delta missing or a minus sign missing. Now, if we were to look at this ISLM curve, and we were to do expansionary fiscal policy, which is what this is describing here, then what we know, and we saw this way back at the beginning of today's lecture, is that that would shift the IS curve, right? We saw that would happen. I don't want to go back to that slide number, but we saw that the IS curve would shift by the money multiplier, right? Was shifting up, was shifting the Keynesian cross, and then just give us good similarity here. Yeah, that one. Right here. Sorry, right here. Right. So there was our Keynesian cross shifting up our planned expenditures, which right. Disregard the I changing, just think of it as the G changing. That gives us our IS curve here, right? Here we go. You can see the IS curve shifting here as a consequence of increased government spending. So that's what we see here, which, as a consequence, raises the equilibrium level of income and increases the equilibrium level of the interest rate. What we see here is that it shifts it by the the government spending multiplier, which is right here, missing a delta G and a minus MPC, causing input and outcome to rise. Interest rates rise, so 1, then 2, then 3. So when we put this together, I'll wait for you then. Let's see.
Let me take a picture of it.
Crayons, yeah, crayons, Crayola. What else? Evokes memories of youth. Turn to smells. Yeah, Stinky Library always does a good job. Like, why is it that the Macy's, has anyone ever been to the Macy's at El Moana? The
No.
Macy's at El Moana.
I've been there, but I don't remember the smell.
You go in there and it smells like an old person's home right when you walk in the beginning. I don't know why it always smells like a basement, but it does. Kids are so interesting though, because, and the reason why I say this is because yesterday, Truman and I were like going, I don't remember where we were, but he smelled diesel. And he's like, oh, that reminds me of Switzerland, because we went to Switzerland in the summer and there's lots of diesel cars. And he remembered, he basically connotes the smell of diesel with being in Europe, because every time we've been to Europe, they use lots of diesel. And every time he smells diesel, he says, oh, it reminds me of Europe. And maybe he's going to have a diesel.
Wait, like, that makes sense though. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, when I went to Japan,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the air is different.
Maybe because it's so is it higher elevation in Japan, or no? Why would it be?
No,
Why does
I
it
think,
seem
I think
different?
it is high elevation.
Because then it feels like that crisper
Yeah,
mountain
the air is crisp.
and like
and, like,
moist a
I
little
felt
bit.
like more energized, and I was
Climate's
like,
better.
go.
Yeah.
Not because I can drink more.
My skin cleared up.
Yeah,
like,
see, then then I guess we all need to go to Japan. Oh wait, that's right, because I'm going to Japan with the vending guy, vending machine guy.
Oh.
Leroy.
Oh,
Yeah, Leroy and I. I'm gonna start a GoFundMe page. I'm not gonna pay for it though. I'm not a sucker. I'm not gonna. Leroy and I are gonna do it. I don't know what we're gonna call it, but. Okay. No, I'll say something like Leroy's been working for this vending machine company that screws him over every week. And the only thing he wants is to take a vacation to Japan. And Shredding is going to be his tour guide, and we're going to need $5,000 to do it. And then I'm going to say to you all, I'm going to give you extra credit if you contribute to my GoFundMe page. I'm going to do a file. Okay. Here we see tax cuts. Again, notice these are, I didn't draw this, but it's obviously implied that this is closer because the tax multiplier is smaller. Oh, well, they say it here too, smaller. Well, those deltas you can show. The other ones you can't.
I think it's in the formula. Like if it's
Yeah. Well, I think what they did is they created an equation editor, because I think they made this in PowerPoint and are using Microsoft's equation editor, and I don't think it translates to Adobe. I don't think.
Have you used RStudio before?
I am actually, that is a very interesting question. I am actually learning it this past week because I'm thinking of teaching a class in it in fall in RStudio.
Are you thinking of teaching 348?
Yeah, that's the course I'm thinking of teaching. No, I think that's what I'm thinking of teaching. No, it's what I'm thinking of teaching in the fall. Oh, you're taking it now? So you're taking it with Wen, or who are you taking it with? Yeah, so Wen asked me to teach it in the future, and that's what I'm saying that I'm gonna.
We don't like we really do not like this class right now because of Wen.
Well, so what I'm gonna try to do is I'm actually thinking of learning enough about R. So are you learning more stats, or are you learning more R?
We're learning nothing.
Oh, well, I guess that's a whole different
It's
issue.
stats. We're trying to use multiple regression. And
See,
reaching
I
out.
think you almost need to spend, and this is where I think Eric and I differ. I think you need to spend more of your time teaching R and less time teaching the stats,
Yeah.
because how
Or
can you
like-
just say to people,
Just
learn
teach in
R?
general.
Yeah, or
that's why we're screwed, because we don't know how to use R.
Yeah,
And we
so-
don't know the R programming.
And then we ask him to teach us, but he doesn't teach us.
Yeah, see, so when I talked to him about it, I said, well, I'd have to spend a lot of time teaching everybody how to use R, and we might not have enough time to do stats, but the idea would be that someone else would take a stats course, and that this would basically be how to use R course, which is actually useful for the business world.
Yeah, and like,
So,
like
Like, should have
literally,
been-
like
yeah,
3 people, like there's 7
Is that a
people in the
basic class?
class.
yeah,
And
this
like-
is my other
What?
thing
Is
with
that a
them.
basic class?
Because usually
What
the
class is
university cancels that kind of class, and I told Eric, if we're gonna run this class and I'm gonna teach it, you're gonna have to take the shit with the administration to allow me to teach a 7-person class, because that class is losing money. Just like I had to take shit to teach this class, because otherwise it was losing money.
Yeah, so there's like 7 people in the class, and like 3 of us is asking him, how do we get the data from Excel into our studio?
Oh yeah, isn't there like a widget, or what do they call? What is R called? Isn't there like a widget thing, or a thing that like takes it? And,
No, so you have to do like a bunch of other stuff to get there.
yeah,
But like when we were asking him, right?
he
Like
probably
literally,
didn't want to spend the
he
time to
literally
do
was
it.
like, so first you gotta go and do this, and then he goes on Google and like looks it up, and then he was like, then you have to do this. And
Do you
then-
have your laptops there when you're doing it?
No, it's in the computer room, so like we have everyone has their own computers,
Like those rooms where we-
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
and like
Do
he
you
never got to telling us how to get that data into our studio.
see? So so this is literally, I have to make this decision in a month whether I'm going to teach BUSA 348 and whether. But Eric is insisting that I use R, which I'm fine with, because I think the world wants us to all use R now. So as an economist, economists are trained to use something called Stata. Stata is proprietary. You have to pay for it just like you pay for like Microsoft Word and other things. So now the world's all in this everything should be free kind of scheme. Yeah, now everything is, if you use R, you're the cool person. So Eric asked me to teach, he wanted me to create an economics class that would replace 348. And I said, I don't really want to create a class that's going to have like 5 people in it, because it takes a lot of work to get a course approved in this university. I don't want to do all that work for just to have 5 people take a class. Why don't I just teach your BUSA 348 class for you? Which he was fine with, and my boss isn't too happy with it, but I think he'll be okay.
He needs like someone to help him because he has like too much classes or something.
Yeah, because isn't he supposed to be doing accounting? Why is he teaching?
He's like 4 different classes.
like
He
back
does
to
work
back.
a lot.
And,
Yeah,
like,
and he's trying to get this data.
he's like he hasn't graded a single assignment from the
Yeah.
beginning of the semester.
But he's also got 4 kids.
like
What?
Yeah, he's got
literally,
4
We
kids.
had 12 assignments like from the beginning of the semester, like resume,
Yeah,
other
yeah.
stuff, and like
Resume? Why are you doing a resume in 348?
I don't know,
And a cover letter.
and a cover letter, and like all this stuff that I'm like, why am I doing this? And
Yeah, it's
he doesn't
348.
even mention it in class. He just assigned it in the syllabus and says you had to do it.
I think it's just to meet the writing intensive requirement.
Oh,
The class is very
yeah.
intensive. The WI class.
What? Yeah.
And
That's why I don't make this class
He
ready.
hasn't graded a single thing from it, and I'm like, I don't know what grade I'm getting in your class.
Yeah, that would probably be useful to know. Well, probably in those kinds of situations, I almost think that usually, oh, you seem the most experienced around here. Isn't it usually the case that when the professor doesn't tell you anything about your grades, everyone's getting an A?
That's what he is.
Yeah, so it usually means they didn't never bother looking at it. And so
Yeah.
at the end, they'll just panic and give everyone.
Exactly, the grade that will cause the least disruption. Yeah.
Yeah, he says as long as it fits the requirements and you're following the guidelines, you should be fine.
So probably just look for one.
So then why bother to do the assignments and just say that you lost it if you never graded? Yeah, I actually, so tell me, as a person who's thinking about embarking on learning R, should I do it?
I think I would be so jealous because I would have wished to taken it from you.
Well, yeah, well, maybe you'll fail this time. You don't know. Maybe you will. You actually have no idea.
I would
You
be so
might-
upset. I would like talk
you-
to the school board or something.
you
I would
might-
find someone to talk to.
Well, what did we learn today? The world's a shitty place. You probably will get no justice.
I will send my mother on him.
Yeah, probably. Or start a GoFundMe page and say, Kristen need $900 to take this class again. Because, yeah,
No,
someone
but I
screwed
can
you.
really, I didn't learn anything in that class.
See, that's the kind of things where it's unfortunate, where every time Ian talks to me about 311, and I'm like, dude, you just wasted $900. And do you worry about that, or you don't think about that? I mean, you needed the credits to
I'm more
graduate.
forgiving just because for me the $900 is to get the degree.
Yeah.
Everything I learn is just bonus basically.
But you're learning more than $900 worth of stuff in this class. So maybe it compensates,
Well,
maybe.
that's true, and I also read the textbook, so I did learn some stuff in that class. But
Yeah, but you're probably the only one who did that.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I need to think if I'm gonna learn R.
Like if he taught us how to use R, I probably would have been a lot happier.
So that's what I want to spend. If I teach 348, I want to spend about half to 3/4 of my time, somewhere between that, teaching R. And then I'll spend the rest of the time teaching statistical things you could do with the thing you just learned. So like the midterm and a little bit over would be, here's how we do R. And then I would spend the rest of the time doing stats.
Wow, what? I wish I had you.
Well, who knows? I mean, that's different than what Boosted 348 got approved of. So the person who has to approve me doing it that way would be Eric. And maybe Eric doesn't want me to do it that way. Maybe he would just say people can learn it themselves.
Literally, like I have a question.
Yeah.
And I raise my hand in class.
Yeah.
He doesn't see it.
Yeah.
Levi's tries to help me.
Yeah.
He goes like this, right? He doesn't see
Yeah, but he's
it.
also shorter too. Isn't Eric shorter
He's just,
too?
the
Or-
reason why he doesn't see it because he talks to the ground.
Oh, that's right, because he is kind of shy, isn't he?
He really just
Yeah.
talks to the ground, very monotone. I can't.
Yeah, he and I walked to my car from the park from here 2 days ago, and he didn't look at me once the entire time, but it's only because I know that he's like that. That usually people look at each other when we're talking. Yeah, he didn't. But that's when I found out he has 4 kids, and he used to live in Boston.
What
So,
college did you go to?
I
Boston.
don't know, but I know that he studied oceanography for a few years. Yeah.
Should be about
Oceanography, and he has 4 kids, and so I know all these like random facts about him. But then there was this whole university. Now everyone that's listening to this gets to learn about the whole thing. There's this ongoing debate going on right now in the university. So you know how what is it? The PUBA group, the public administration thing. They own that healthcare space now on this campus, right? So like if you want to do anything about healthcare on this campus, you have to do it through a public administration degree. So like healthcare economics, you would think I could get that course cross-listed with public administration, right? Because it's like healthcare and stuff. No, they wouldn't do it because they weren't teaching the class and they own the healthcare space. That's why the class is just Econ 334. And that's why it's not cross-listed with anyone. So all of us have been burned by it because now public administration now owns healthcare on this campus. If you want to do healthcare, it's all going to be through. Just like Chapman, I like the guy, but he now owns like information security and assurance. Like if you want to do anything about cybersecurity, it's all through Chapman. That's what was being attempted with data was then, oh, we're going to capture everything. Eric is going to own data on this campus. Anyone who wants to do data security or data analysis, all has to be through him. But I don't think it's going to happen because now everyone's wise to what people are doing. So now everyone's saying, no, we can all teach courses in R if we want to. If we want to, that was the key thing. Anyway, I'm not creating an econ class. I told Eric 2 days ago, the only way I'll do it is if I could just teach 348, which I think he's actually fine with me doing because then I think he'll teach 349. Are you going to take 349? Oh, it's the follow-up course.
I think that's the one with Python.
Yeah, that's right, the snake, yeah.
Yeah, that's the other guy who takes it. He
Yeah.
told me that one's really interesting. He says same thing. You cannot listen to one.
Yeah, so then it's like, well, so I live in faculty housing. I live 2 doors down from a guy who does everything in R at the Manoa campus. And so whenever he and I talk, he has like a geek out fest just talking about all the things that R can do. So I'm usually walking around my 9-month-old, like strolling him in the stroller to get him to fall asleep. And so he'll just take advantage of the time and walk with me from faculty housing all the way to Safeway, just talking to me about all the things that R can do. So finally he's convinced me, along with Eric,
For
about
Safeway
what
by
R can
Manoa?
do. Yeah, yeah.
Is it- you live in
Yeah,
Manoa?
so I live, yeah, exactly, those dorms that are right by that Safeway.
Yeah, I know, because I remember he used to catch a shuttle. And they would
Yeah,
stop by.
exactly. So that thing where you would catch it from, I live on the other side. So the one that's got like the slightly bigger places. So I'm not in the really cramped ones, but
Yeah,
I'm in the
that's why
slightly.
you got stuck in the traffic for
Yeah, and then I park on Lowry. So I park my car on Lowry, but I'm leaving just as other cars are parking. So as the Christians of the world are parking at Manoa, I'm leaving to go to West Oahu. So the street's getting used all the time, basically. But anyway, Jeff, spelled with a G, is like proselytizing to me about how great R is. Just like, I'm Catholic, and sometimes like Catholics get pretty proselytizing and saying like, dude, Catholics are great. That's what this Jeff guy is about R.
No, that's like 1, 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I've got 2 people telling me how great R is, and now I think I'm converted because they're just telling me
Like
how great.
anytime I'm like, how did you do this in Excel? He's like, I don't know how you do it in Excel.
Why would you do it in Excel?
Yeah.
Exactly. No.
He's
So
like,
exactly.
He's like,
So
do it in our studio.
so there was this debate among 2 faculty members about R, and like in this whole thing about why do we have to do everything in R? And it was basically one person saying Excel, Stata, SPSS, like all these things, paid for programs, saying these things do it pretty well. And then Eric saying, no, you can just do it all in R, and R is better. But people were writing these really long emails over the weekend, which I love you all, but you're never going to get a long email from me on the weekend because I'm home and I'm not sending. Yeah, anyway. So I think he was typing it on the computer because there's no way you can type that on the phone. Okay. So we saw this as well. So besides fiscal policy being expansionary or contractionary, we could also have the expansionary monetary policy, which way back there, right, there was a slide where we saw the LM curve shifting to the right, causing the decrease in the interest rates as the money supply changes, right? Going back to my whole target statement versus changing the money supply. Okay, ISLM. So now we're seeing IS curve shifting because of what? Fiscal policy or monetary policy? Just to remind us, IS curve shifting because of fiscal policy, LM curve shifting because of monetary policy, which means, I'm just going to jump ahead. I'm going to go back to it. I just want to, which gives you an idea, and I'll go back to the other slide here, but it gives you an idea of how shifting the IS curve shifts the ED curve. Right? Because now, as a drop-down graph, we're basically saying, now I want to know how is the, how do I represent this with a PQ space instead of an RY space or RQ space? In other words, how does expansionary fiscal policy translate into different price levels in the economy? I just jumped ahead there just to give you an idea of why it's important to remember it that way. Let's go back to this. Okay, so fiscal policy IS, monetary policy LM. Okay, so this is going to be part of the, I was saying before class started to Cash that tomorrow and Monday, my goal is that by the end of day on Monday, I will have your exam made, and I'll have it due probably the Wednesday of December the 5th probably, so I can get them all on grade by the 7th or whenever. Wait, we're graduating. I know, so I have a little bit more time to do it. But I would encourage you to look at these scenarios. So this is scenario 55, slide 55 through 58, because I'm going to ask you questions with these kinds of scenarios where you have to change things around. I don't want to go through it because you can read, and I want to preserve time where I need to. But I'm going to ask you some question related to 55 through 58. You all did pretty well on the exam in terms of looking at slides and getting things. I said this in healthcare economics when I handed back their exams. When you're looking at your exam, if you're sitting anywhere in the 90s, you basically have an A on your exam. You might think, wow, Shane, you're really nitpicky about that. I'm never asking that you read my mind, because how could you read my mind about what I was asking for before you actually got it? What I'm hoping, again, is that probably most of you who have gotten to this stage are a little bit perfectionist, and you're going to be like, oh, he took off 2 points for that? Wow, what a dick. But you're also going to remember he took off 2 points for this, and so hopefully years down the road, right, you'll kind of remember that. Just like my father, who puts a period at the end of everything, even if it doesn't require a period, because he went to Catholic school and, you know, some nun slapped him on the hands for like not putting a period properly, and now he always puts a period after everything. Reading a letter from him is like, yeah, I wish I had a copy of something he's written. Yeah, puts a period after everything. But I'm hoping that my minor comments will make you sadistically perfectionist in that kind of way. But everyone did pretty fine on their exams.
What do you mean by when you said a 90 is an A? Like
Anything from 90% to 100 is an A. Anything from usually about 86 or 87 to 89 is an A minus.
Oh.
And then 85, somewhere in the mid 80s. So this is for any upper level class that I teach. Mid 80s, you're at a B plus to low 80s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean for me.
Oh.
I mean for me. How does the numbers? So when you do principles, it's more or less the same. At least with anything in the 90s is an A in principles, and then it kind of goes from there. Yeah. The university's official. I don't think the university has an official scale. I don't think. Yeah, it does or it does not.
Does not. My
Yeah.
English class,
Yeah.
get a 95 or above, get 94 to a 90 is minus. Yeah,
Or you could just take 348. And
Well, like,
Well,
everyone
like
gets an A.
Toto, he like curves it, so he's all like.
Yeah, and see, and I do a curve, and then there's some professors who don't do a curve. Yeah, and that's why people need to. Seriously, that's why professors need to talk about it at least, because then everyone's on the same page.
Well,
And
he just tells in the beginning of the semester.
yeah, in the beginning of the semester, or at least turn stuff back that people gave to you.
Right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally, I talked to him about like.
You're not gonna get.
Notes,
You're not
and
gonna
I
get it
say,
back. Yeah.
when you haven't graded anything yet.
Yeah, you're not gonna get it. He just really wanted to teach. He really did want to. I mean, I haven't known him that long, but he seems incredibly interested about R.
He's very interested about art,
Incredibly
but
interested.
he doesn't teach it.
Yeah.
See,
So
what I tell you, he's obsessed with art.
he is.
I make jokes every day
It's
about
jokes
how
about
he says art.
You should get. You should
Time
get.
to go to class, what's hard art students.
You should get a T-shirt. A T-shirt with R, right? Isn't there? So I just downloaded last week. At the end of last week, I downloaded R Studio and R to my Apple computer, and I'm not sure if it's working well yet. So I'm not totally.
You download all the packages.
See, that's the thing. Now I see all these packages, and now I got to figure out, because I also use Qualtrics to collect survey data, and then Eric told me, yeah, there's a package to do Qualtrics data, survey data into R. And then I'm wondering why am I trying to learn this, and that's the existential crisis I have now, which is why I was turning to you both to figure out whether I
What
should
do
do.
you?
I should have taken the course. Maybe
What
not.
are you doing on Monday?
What?
What are you doing on Monday?
On Monday? What am I doing on Monday? That's a good question.
Are
Nothing.
you free around like 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
9 o'clock. When is it?
9:30.
9:30 to 11.
Yeah, I don't get here that early. I get here like 10 o'clock.
Because in the symposium they're doing the like a research symposium thing
Oh, yeah.
on Monday, and we're gonna be presenting our posters there. They have food, free food inside. You can go.
You want to know a secret?
What?
I'm actually the judge of all the posters.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I'm actually the judge of all
I
the
didn't even know I was
posters.
getting
I
judged.
get to determine who gets first place, second place, and third place. I am the only judge on this campus.
And you didn't even know that you were gonna go. You're like,
yeah, okay. Wait. Yeah, I am the judge. So I get to determine wait, do I mute this? Yeah, I can
Yeah, don't do it. Be jealous.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. I'm gonna pick it up from. Wait, what is it telling me? Oh, now it's slowly fading out there. Okay. So I will pick it up from the case studies. That seems relevant to do it that way. Yeah, that's good. I'll pick it up from the case studies after in our last class. So we obviously have Thanksgiving next week. In our last class, I will finish up some slides, but I also want to talk about cool stuff that we can do in macro and kind of close up the semester as well. Well, but you're not going to miss too much, and we'll have the video, and you'll be fine. Unless, again, and I did want to